The Bernabeu doesn't whisper. It roars, it weeps, it remembers. And tonight it said goodbye. 2-0. That's what the scoreboard said, cold and clean. Real Madrid over Real Sociedad. But who in the stands or on the pitch cared? Not really. This match could have finished 10-0 or 2-2, and the story would still be draped in the same emotion. Because this wasn't a game. Not really. It was a farewell wrapped in 90-odd minutes of football. A tribute disguised as competition. Three names lingered in the evening air like incense. Carlo Ancelotti, Luka Modric, Lucas Vazquez. Gone, not forgotten, leaving their footprints permanently pressed into the marble of Madrid's modern mythology. Let's start where we must, with Ancelotti. This was his final bow in the Madrid dugout, and he looked every bit the icon he is. No wild gestures, no false modesty, just that familiar grandfatherly elegance, nodding his way through the evening, like a man who has lived 1,000 lifetimes in this sport. He doesn't need to shout to command a room or a stadium. The most decorated manager in Real Madrid history. That's not a title. It's a sentence carved in footballing granite. Then there was Vazquez. Not a Galactico, never needed to be. But if you've watched Madrid for the past decade, you've seen him. Always running, always stretching the touchline, always turning up when the spotlight was somewhere else. Tonight, it finally landed on him. Over 400 games, 22 trophies, a man who outlived every hype cycle and kept his relevance by sheer force of will and utility. He walked off to a cascade of applause, head slightly bowed, eyes wet. Not tragic, not even bittersweet, just full. Full of everything football can give you if you give it everything first. And then, Modric. Luka Modric does not leave football fields. He evaporates from them, like the last note of a sonata hanging in the rafters of the Bernabeu, refusing to die. What can be said that the tears in the crowd didn't already scream? Guard of honor. The whole damn stadium was on its feet. Players from both sides parting like the Red Sea as the little Croatian magician made his way to the touchline one final time. 10 years ago, he was mocked as the worst signing of the season. Now he walks off a legend. Not a club legend. A football legend. The embrace with Ancelotti, the kiss on the forehead from Cruz, the children, the chants. This was cinema. This was farewell theater. This was Bernabeu's ovation for its poet-in-chief. And in the midst of all that emotion, somewhere between the ovations and the tears, someone remembered there was a match going on. The Mbappe show continues. One penalty, scruffy but effective, and one clean strike, courtesy of Vinicius' subtle brilliance. But even that second goal felt like it tiptoed around the real story, like it didn't want to intrude. It came in the 83rd minute, respectfully, after the curtain call. Like Mbappe himself knew this night wasn't really his. Madrid's expected goals were sky high, Sociedad's were not. The stats were lopsided, but so was the emotional weight of the evening. This wasn't a football match, it was a ritual. The truth is, this night wasn't built for competition. It was built for closure. The actual football was incidental, the way background music is to a wedding. It's there, sure, but you'll remember the vows, not the playlist. And now? Now the season closes. The players head off for their summer adventures, some to the Club World Cup, some to new jobs, some to rest. But something ended tonight. Something heavy. Something golden. Madrid doesn't rebuild. It evolves. And this was the moment the old gods bowed out, stage left. What do you even say after that? What words can follow the kind of goodbye that echoes? We'll talk about the first half and second half in a moment, but let me leave this here in the thick of the goodbyes. The Bernabeu isn't a place. It's a memory machine. And tonight, it burned 3 more names into the collective soul of football. The match itself, if we can even pretend to care about tactics on a night like this, unfolded like a quietly written sonnet. You wouldn't call it explosive. You wouldn't call it vintage Madrid either. But what you would call it is respectful. Like the players knew, on both sides, that the spotlight was already spoken for, so they danced around it, keeping things polite. The first half, it had the quiet energy of a goodbye party where no one wants to make a mess, but someone still brings out the karaoke machine. Madrid were in control, absolutely, but they weren't in a rush. The tempo felt like it had been dipped in honey. Slick, slow, sticky. Guler looked like the little cousin desperate to prove he belonged. Always touching the ball, always looking forward. He fed Mbappe early on, set up chances, Even tried his luck from range. If we're talking about hunger, Güler was the only one at the buffet. Mbappe, well, what's left to say? 38 minutes in, the universe handed him a gift-wrapped moment. A handball, confirmed by the video assistant referee. Up he steps, confident as always. The first shot? Saved. A hiccup. A moment of drama. But then, like someone calmly flicking a smudge off their suit jacket, he slots in the rebound. 1-0. It wasn't poetry, but it was efficient. The kind of goal you get when the football gods have clearly updated your stats in the background. Sociedad had their moments. Let's not pretend they didn't. Early on, Gomez got behind the Madrid backline, one-on-one with Lunin, and the keeper came out looking like someone who had no intention of letting this narrative be interrupted. That save in the 9th minute? That was defiance. That was Lunin saying, not tonight. But the thing is, Sociedad didn't really believe. They puffed their cheeks, they passed in triangles, they pressed in fits, but belief? That wasn't in the luggage. Madrid's midfield, old as it was, had time to stretch and yawn before making a decision. And by the time halftime arrived, the scoreline was fair. 1-0, balanced. Enough to mark the difference, not enough to write anyone off. Then the second half. The lights dimmed a little more. This wasn't a show anymore. It was a ceremony. Modric started pulling the strings with that casual brilliance we've all stopped gasping at because it's just normal for him. Flicks. Loops. Crossfield passes with the precision of a sniper. And still, it was all warm-up to the goodbye. Vinicius came on, rested, maybe even a little eager. And you could feel it. That shift in the air when someone quick arrives and suddenly the tempo wakes up. He buzzed around the left flank, like a mosquito with rhythm, and Sociedad's defense had no citronella. 83rd minute. Boom. Vinicius, with the eyes of an architect, slips in a ball that was more suggestion than command. Mbappe doesn't hesitate. Quick step. Near post finish. 2-0. And not a soul in the stadium reacted like they had seen something outrageous. No gasps. Just nods. Like they all expected it. Like he's reached the stage in his Madrid career where excellence is now just the price of admission. And after that, nothing mattered. The rest was just curtain call. Vazquez came off. Modric followed. The substitutions felt like pages being turned in a book that was about to close itself. Sociedad made their changes too, and sure, they tried. A shot here, a run there. But Madrid weren't biting. This wasn't about closing a game. This was about closing a chapter. By the time the whistle blew, even the scoreline had given up trying to be dramatic. 2-0. Madrid quietly walked off into a night heavy with endings. Sociedad looked like guests at a wedding they weren't invited to, but didn't want to leave early from either. It's strange. The game was fine. Good even. But no one will remember the passes. They'll remember the hugs. What stood out, really, when you scrape away the emotion and the tributes and the slow, soft focus goodbyes, was how different these two teams felt, not just in quality, but in character. Real Madrid and Real Sociedad played the same game, yes, but they were never playing the same story. Let's start with Madrid. Because, well, you kind of have to. This was less a team than a constellation of parting stars. Ancelotti in the dugout, pulling strings for the last time. Modric in midfield, ghosting through challenges like he was made of vapor and willpower. Vazquez out on the flank, doing his part, like the veteran roadie at a farewell tour who knows when to hold the spotlight and when to step back. They didn't need the win. They wanted the moment. And they got it. What's fascinating is how Madrid, this club of brutal standards and silver-coated expectations, suddenly looked like a family. The tactical rigidity we always expect wasn't there. Why would it be? This wasn't a night for systems. This was a night for memories. And the funny thing is, they still dominated, not in a savage, ruthless Champions League final sort of way. No, they dominated like a father sparring with his kid in the backyard. They let Sociedad play. They gave them hope, but not too much, just enough to remind them who owns the house. Then you have Real Sociedad, and I feel for them, honestly. They were the +1 to the wedding reception. They showed up in good faith. They changed their entire lineup, rested their regulars, and said, okay, we know the deal, let's just try to play football. But that's the thing about showing up to someone else's goodbye. You're not the main character. You're just part of the set dressing. Still, they didn't go quietly. Kubo, for example, kept trying to inject energy. You could see he wanted to play spoiler, if only for pride. The first 10 minutes, Sociedad were even sharper. They had a couple of looks. Sergio Gomez nearly broke through. Marius Carena had an effort deflected. But it all felt like a preview to a show that never aired. They had possession, for stretches. They strung passes together. They crossed. They pressed. But never once did it feel like they were about to take the match by the throat. It was all surface-level intensity. Deep down, even they knew the best they could hope for was to not get steamrolled in someone else's documentary. And it's not that Sociedad were bad. Far from it. They're a tidy side, disciplined, mostly, young. But there's a weight that comes with playing Madrid in Madrid, and that weight felt doubled tonight. Because they weren't just playing against Modric and Mbappe, they were playing against legacy. Good luck with that. What was missing for Sociedad was belief. And maybe some bite. You sensed it, especially in the second half. They were waiting for Madrid to decide how it would end. Hoping, not demanding. That's how you end up losing 2-0 in a match that won't hurt your pride but also won't be remembered. Not by you, not by them, not by anyone. Madrid, on the other hand, were more than just the better side. They were the more aware side. Aware of what the match meant. Aware of the emotional choreography. They knew when to press. They knew when to ease off. They played with grace. Not the footballing kind. The human kind. So, yes, this was two teams on the same pitch. But they weren't close. Not tactically, not emotionally, not historically. And in the end, that difference was the point, not the problem. Now, let's talk about the individuals. Because if the match was the frame, then the players were the brushstrokes. Some sharp, some soft, some soaked in color, others just faint lines fading into memory. And like any piece of art worth feeling, this one had contrast. Brights and shadows, farewells and futures. You had to look closely, but once you did, you couldn't unsee it. Mbappe. Of course, Mbappe. Because even in a match wrapped in Modric's emotion and Ancelotti's legacy, he still managed to underline the scoreline. Twice. He's like a punctuation mark that shows up at the end of every Madrid sentence now. He didn't have a flashy night. That wasn't required. What he had was efficiency. That penalty? Not perfect, saved even. But he followed it up like a striker who doesn't care how it goes in as long as it does. That second goal, textbook Mbappe. Read the run, read the weight, read the finish. It was the football equivalent of a mic drop. And he did it without breaking a sweat. He's not Madrid's future. He's there right now. Vinicius Jr., who came on in the second half like a caffeinated hummingbird, reminded everyone why he's so much more than a highlight reel. The assist he gave Mbappe for the second goal was poetry in lowercase. No flash, no tricks, just awareness. A simple glide across the box, a soft touch inside, and boom, goal. That's maturity. That's the difference between potential and product. Güler, bless him, played like a child desperate to impress Santa. Buzzing around, looking for angles, testing his limits. You can see the raw talent in him like a spark in dry leaves. He's not quite there yet. But give him time. The kid's trying things. Risking passes. Shooting on sight. And he did all this while knowing the stadium's heart was busy breaking for other people. That takes guts. Modric. I almost don't want to talk about him. Not because he wasn't brilliant. He was. But because he doesn't need a review. He doesn't want one. He played like someone writing the last page of a journal. Not trying to impress, just trying to say goodbye the only way he knows how. With the ball, with a pirouette, with an outside-of-the-foot pass no one else on the planet would think to make. He didn't dominate the match. He blessed it. That's different. That's rarer. Vazquez, for his part, was honest. Always has been. Played like a man who knew this was the end but wasn't going to phone it in. Got up, got down, made overlapping runs, defended, sweated through his goodbye. No drama, no flair. Just commitment. If Modric was a violin, Vazquez was a drum. Steady, humble, essential. Valverde? Smooth as usual. That passed Mbappe in the first half. Razor through fabric. Didn't score, didn't need to. Just connected things. Gave shape to the rhythm. Tchouaméni was less noticeable, but he played his part, until the touch that almost led to a Sociedad break. Human after all. Even in white. And Lunin. Let's not forget him. Made a massive save early on, came off his line like a man defending more than just a clean sheet. He was defending the tone of the night. That save on Gomez? That was him putting his foot down and saying, not on this night. For Sociedad, it was Kubo who offered flickers. He tried, always tries. Little bursts of dribbling chaos, some nice link-up play, but he looked like a spark trying to light wet wood. Gomez had a golden chance, wasted. Marias Carena, a couple of half-chances. But let's be honest, none of them grabbed the match. None of them stood up and said, "I'll ruin this goodbye." They played within the lines, as guests should. And then there was Ancelotti, watching from the sideline like a man at his own wake, calm, smiling. He didn't need to shout. He said all he needs to say over the years, in titles, in dressing room speeches, in the calmest eyebrow raise in European football. He didn't coach tonight. He presided over it. So you see, it wasn't the scoreline. It wasn't even the performance. It was the presence of these players, past and future, colliding for one last time on the same pitch. It was farewell and formation, history and heartbeat. And that, my weary football romantic, is the real magic of nights like these. When the match isn't the memory, the people are. This has been Across the Pitch, over and out.